So in this video, I'm just going to provide a few thoughts on the whole Alison Prime situation. But first, let's just have a quick catch up on exactly who Alison Prime is and what's happened. So Alison Prime was a fairly prominent member of the Gamergate community. It has actually been cited by some pretty important people within that community in the past, including Christine Hoff Summers. So Alison Prime claimed to be a female, and of course it now turns out they're a man all along. This isn't really a big deal within the online gaming community, but unfortunately they also claimed to have had pretty serious stuff in their past, such as having their uterus removed when they were young, claimed to be a cancer and domestic abuse survivor in the past, and they made a big deal of this as part of the whole Nut Your Shield movement. This weekend, Alison Prime was unveiled as Steve, a 30-year-old man. Whilst this would undoubtedly have caused much upset within the community anyway, there is another factor which understandably made the situation much more serious. Alison Prime had been raising funds on GoFundMe because of an apparent house fire and had got well over $10,000, a fair chunk of that likely from Gamergate. The community understandably felt they were scammed. As it turns out, the house fire was real even if the person wasn't. Like many of you, last night I was watching the Retort live stream, and whilst I was already aware of most of the facts, I hadn't immersed myself in the situation, so big props to everyone at the Retort, all of the panellists, for covering so many of those important issues and making it very clear what had actually happened. I'd highly recommend watching it if you're interested, as they did an interview with Steve, the man who had up to that point claimed to be Alison Prime. The actual interview lasts for about 2.5 hours. The link is in the description for this video, so I recommend you go and watch it. Having said all that, I did find parts of the interview pretty uncomfortable. As someone not immediately involved in the situation, I think perhaps I didn't quite realise how much anger there was over it. In particular, I found Goosey's first real go at Steve to be pretty intense. At one point I was half expecting to find myself in a field with mortar shells crashing around me. However, as the show went on and I heard lie after lie from Steve and heard the impact of what he'd done on real people, I came to understand why he was so intense at the start. I mean, Steve was actually laughing quite frequently. Now, in fairness, that could have been more because of nerves than because of some sort of amusement at the situation, but either way, it didn't really come across very well. And he didn't really seem to care that much about what he had done. I mean, it just didn't really feel like he was particularly remorseful. I think overall the panel did a really good job, everyone, including Goose. I did mention earlier that I was a little bit uncomfortable with how he approached it at first, but that was before I'd heard the whole thing and before I really knew the situation. And so actually I think everyone did a really good job. And I think despite the fact clearly obviously the panel would be stacked against Steve because, obviously it's the whole Gamergate issue and everything like that, I think they were actually pretty fair overall in terms of not pushing things too far, and I don't really think it ever got too bad, especially considering what he's actually done. So actually it did leave me with one question for Steve, and that is, why come on the show if you're going to keep lying? Clearly if you go on the show then you want to gain something from it in some way. I mean, you wouldn't go on there if you didn't have something that you'd hope to gain from it, whether it's presumably some sort of, shred of redemption, perhaps try and make people feel a little bit better about you, perhaps hoping maybe people will still keep donating, because if you can kind of show that you're still the same person, as you were, despite obviously having a different name, gender, and all those other things that you made up, but despite all that, perhaps you were hoping people might still be willing to donate if you could show with some sort, that you'd actually kind of redeemed yourself. But obviously you kept lying, so, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Why keep lying if you actually want people to sort of trust you, and donate money to you? That doesn't make sense, it just doesn't. And I think, the message was quite confused. I didn't really see why he was there. And at some points he was trying to say, I understand everything I've done is wrong. At other points he was saying it's all about my family. But at no point did I really feel like I was clear that he was particularly sorry for what he'd done or learned any lessons from it. That's just what I thought. I think that's what many other people did think. Given that he wasn't willing to tell the truth, that he probably shouldn't have come on the interview whatsoever and just left it out of the text interview. Then I don't think he gained anything from that. But, unfortunately it does leave me with one other conclusion of why he might have gone on the show. And that's, for some bizarre reason, his willingness to to sacrifice his name at the altar of some sort of internet fame. You know, he seemed to as some people have said, and I kind of can get, he seemed to quite enjoy it. So maybe he wanted the fame or the infamy. I don't know. But if it was that, that's pretty sad for him and for his family to put himself and his family and the family name through that. So I don't know. Go and watch a video and see what you think. And again, you know, great work by all the people at Retort, great panelists, and yeah, I'd recommend you go and watch it. Links in the description.